Hello and welcome to podcast.init, the podcast about Python and the people who make it great. When you're ready to launch your next app or want to try a project you hear about on the show, you'll need somewhere to deploy it, so check out our friends over at Linode. With their managed Kubernetes platform, it's easy to get started with the next generation of deployment and scaling, powered by the battle-tested Linode platform, including simple pricing, node balancers, 40 gigabit networking, and dedicated CPU and GPU instances. And now you can launch a managed MySQL, Postgres, or Mongo database cluster in minutes to keep your critical data safe with automated backups and failover. Go to pythonpodcast.com/Linode today to get a $100 credit to try out their new database service, and don't forget to thank them for their continued support of this show. Your host, as usual, is Tobias Macey, and today I'm interviewing Tony Pavlovych about Python's strengths for startups and the steps to building an MVP. So, Tony, can you start by introducing yourself?
For sure, that's a pleasure. Thanks for having me here. My name is Tony, and I'm co-founder at Planix. Planix is a web development company specialized in Python, and I'm the one who originated it, one part of it. So co-founder at Planix, that's who I am.
And do you remember how you first got introduced to Python?
Yes, that's an interesting point. And I think it's all about evolution and developers' curiosity, because I'm being like a business mind, like businessman, not a tech guy myself, but still highly involved into technical things in Python. Like this story started 10 years ago. It started when I was a business developer at one Ukrainian company. And it was a company providing web development services. At that time, it was really popular to deal with PHP, .NET, and all the things. But like developer curiosity, this is something that brought the Python up. And this was actually the request of my colleagues and employees we worked with. And they asked like if there is a chance to deal with Python, because at that time they just played with it. They learned some basics of it, a couple of simple scripts, but there was some, curiosity to understand what the tool is about, how powerful it is, and etc. So, like 10 years ago, it was like my first touch with Python, and after talking to the CTO of the company, we decided to actually look for potentially interesting commercial projects with Python, and that's how we actually found one of the fintech startups, and this was our like first cool, really interesting and challenging commercial project. So it was our first touch with Python like 10 years ago.
You mentioned that despite not being technical by sort of training, you've ended up in that space and you helped to co-found the Planix agency. I'm wondering if you can describe a bit about what it is that motivated you to start a business in this space and some of the story behind how you ended up building this company and some of the particular services that you're focused on offering.
Yeah, okay. So to start with, like the first sentence that describes us is Python web development services. That's what we are all about. But another thing about us is about business, because I think that all of the technologies, they are made up for solving problems, solving challenges, and like solving actually potential like real needs of the customers, clients, and just it's your tool. It's something that you use to make good things. And my idea, it's not only my, but it's idea of me and my co-founder. It came of a good service. So everyone enjoys receiving a great service. And the same thing about web development and outsourcing, outstaffing in general. This is our industry. So I understand that there is a way to to build a bridge between technologies, business, by providing like a great service. Because what we were doing in my first company where I started, we were helping people to build their products. And during that time, I've seen, I don't know, like 200, 300 products that people try to build from scratch, from trying to rewrite them to support their legacy products. So people from all over the world. And it was really challenging and interesting to deal with the entire world and speak like two languages of like business and technology. And after we discovered like Python, like how powerful this tool is, we decided to really build something great where we could combine all our passions, where we could provide like technology solution to business challenges, where we could provide perfect business solutions, where we could help our clients to grow our business and That's how we ended up creating Planix. So we started this place to make it a good place both for our employees and for our clients. So both of parties involved could really enjoy the process. So it's not just average work, but it's something great, something bigger, building your product, building your lifestyle for employees and building the products for the client. So we call ourselves startup for startups because we are like self-funded business and we know what it takes and what are the challenges of the companies who are trying to start their business from scratch. And that's what makes great because we know the pitfalls, we know how to overcome difficulties. So that's how we combine technology and business. And after like seeing a lot of people trying to do that, we understood that we saw enough to be ready to share our experience and to produce some great effort on the way to make the world a bit better place to live, to share like our passion to technologies and to business.
One of the core necessities for any business that's starting out is being able to prove out their ideas and determine whether or not their product direction is something that their customers are actually interested in, which is part of the motivation for building an MVP or a minimum viable product for people who aren't familiar with that acronym. I'm curious if you can talk to some of the goals and outcomes that organizations are looking for when they come to you looking to build an MVP, or when they first start thinking about what are the initial capabilities that they're targeting, what is the scope and the objective of the MVP that they're trying to build?
That's a really good question because you really should find out what it is all about. So when it comes to MVP or minimum viable product, I would compare it with a couple of things, like to those who never encountered with such terms, who never dealt with that. Let's think about, sort of, for example, wine degustation or cheese degustation, or for example, test drive of the new car, or I don't know if you have such things here. It's like temporary tattoo, which goes away like in a week or two. MVP is quite similar to all of that because from its name, it's about something which is minimum version of the full real product. And this was invented for businesses and not only for businesses. This idea is actually applicable to like real life, to anything you do in your real life. So it's when you don't know if the market really needs your product. It's when you're not sure if your idea is really great. It's when you doubt about different nuances of your product, or if you have some hesitation about your product, or you just need to find the right way to move on with your idea. That's where MVP comes on the scene. So MVP helps you to spend not too much effort and not too much of your time, not so many time, not too many resources on something, but still get the feedback and get information, get insights to build this product well and to adjust it to your customer needs. So it will help you to collect maximum feedback from your potential customer. That's what it's made for. It helps you to analyze the market demand, or for example, to prove your idea. That's the basics. Additionally, MVP is great when you're not sure about your technical stack. So it helps you to test this technical stack as well. So without you know investing heavily into that. At the same time, when it comes to monetizing your product, MVP is another great thing to verify the strategies that you had in mind. And at the end of the day, it lowers your risks and already lets you to engage with your potential clients. So that's the best thing about the MVP, that describe it like in very detail. So
when I was preparing for this conversation, I found a useful post on your site about the differentiation between a minimum viable product, a proof of concept, and a prototype. And I'm wondering if you can talk to what are the distinguishing characteristics of each of those approaches, and when a company is better served just going with a proof of concept or a prototype and not going the full MVP route, and some of the types of information that they're able to gather by going through those different stages.
this is the mistake that clients often do. They mix up the terms between prototype, proof of concept, MVP, and it's really important to know the difference between them. So, like if we talk about the prototype, let's talk about it in the way like What is it? Why you should use it? Who is the audience? And when is the best time to use prototype, proof of concept, or MVP? So if we talk about the first stage among these approaches and solution like prototype. So in fact, what is prototype and why it's different from proof of concept? So prototype is something like clickable. It's like clickable piece of software that doesn't require any coding, that you could already see, but you don't spend any time on writing the code. Because compared to proof of concept, which is like already some simple solution with minimum features, but really no design. This is the difference. While at the same time, MVP is already a product. It's still minimum viable, but still version of your product, which you can already use and test. So why do you actually need to create any of this? If we talk about MVP, which is the topic today, this is like the most powerful thing because you could collect the feedback, engage your customers, and test the market. That's about MVP. At the same time, proof of concept is a bit different thing because it just proves the feasibility of your concept. So feasibility, and that's it. So compared to prototype, which just gives you the visual representation of the flows and gives you understanding of basic features. So it helps you to, to calibrate your ideas a bit. And if we talk about audience of these like approaches and stages, the audience is also different. For MVP, it's already your early adopters and your potential clients. So it's like real guys. Well, proof of concept is more about some internal things. It's about your stakeholders who participate in this process. It's about some internal experts and maybe some your future investors. So it's not a real world thing yet, but it's already about important people. And prototype is just the very like low level. It's for investors, stakeholders, and some early focus groups. That's it. And if we talk about the time when each of the things should be done and presented, then MVP is already a development phase. So it's the phase that's before the launch of the real full product. As for proof of concept, you should go with it after you are done with the discovery stage and you have already done some planning, if it's of course required. And again, back to prototype, it's during the discovery stage or maybe a bit after. So it's a bit similar to proof of concept at this stage. So a big difference is the audience and a bit time of the implementation of these stages. And at the same time, you should remember that MVP is already the first version of your product because prototype and proof of concept, these are preparational stuff. This is something for mostly internal use.
As far as the scoping of the MVP, what are some of the pieces of information that companies and teams are able to gather from that prototype and proof of concept phase that can feed into the MVP to help them understand these are the ideas that are not worth pursuing, these are the things that we want to do but not right now, and figuring out each of the key semantics of maintaining the minimum amount of scope viable to make sure that it's actually something that's useful and functional and a product in terms of something that's actually ready for end users to interact with, even if it is still a little rough around the edges.
We should understand that MVP comes from some point. It either comes from marketing team or it comes from your idea. So it has some source. It has the beginning. And depending on this beginning, you could come up with a different set of assets that you have at this time. For example, what do I mean? If it comes from marketing, you already have probably a long list of requirements, or you maybe have a lot of ideas that you have to test and just to make sure that they're right for your product. When it comes just from your own idea to build, a new Facebook or a new, I don't know, Instagram, some new big product, revolutionary product, then it's probably your personal thoughts, your personal experience. And it leads us to the different set of like things we have before we begin. So probably it's a list of ideas or list of requirements. And when it comes to, to scoping, what's going to be actually the part of the MVP, it may sound complex, but in fact, it's pretty simple because you may have this long list, but when we come and start discussing what's going to be part of the MVP, we just propose you and offer you to rule out until you have the list of 10, until you have the list of 10 features. Then we revise this list again. So when you start ruling out the features, you understand. So, for example, without this feature, the product could leave and your clients won't lose the value, because MVP is all about the value. You should bring your value to customers with your minimum effort, because you need to really make sure that this is of real value. And once we start ruling out all of these requirements, and when we start to shorten our list, we think about like what we really need and what could bring this value to our customers. So at the stage when we have 10 bullets with the potential features, we ask our clients to cut the list to 5 bullets. And then when we have like really 5 of the things, we could really begin approximate estimation. And when we see that it fits our timeline, it fits our budget, then we could come to an agreement. So all of this scoping, it's all about the dialogue with stakeholders and with the developers. Because while cutting out this unnecessary for the MVP features, we rethink all of that. So that's the process. We should understand that nothing is different. And even there were cases when we cut all of the features till just one feature. And even then we modify this feature, because it took us a while to go through this process until we really understood what we should start with. So this is all about the dialogue, and dialogue that leads to the final value that you could bring to your clients. And additionally, you should take into account that sometimes these requirements are already defined by the industry. For example, if we take into account healthcare industry, it has its internal policies and compliances that you have to follow. It already defines your scope. So to make a long story short, when you have a long list, you just begin to rule out things that you believe your customers could live without until like later stages. And when you go to the heart of your product, that's your like killer feature, the main thing, something that will move your business further.
The other side of the MVP conversation is once you've built it and launched it, there's the question of determining whether it is successful and what features you need to add in the subsequent set of priorities, and just the overall process of understanding what is the actual outcome of building and releasing this MVP. Because once it's running and people are using it, you need to have some set of measurements or some set of objectives that you're able to determine whether or not this was successful, or whether you need to, just kill it and, accept the loss and move on with some other ideas, and just figuring out what are some of the potential issues that organizations run into with the lost cost or with the sunk cost fallacy, where they say, well, we've already built it, we need to just keep pushing on this. And understanding when it's worth investing in it further and when you need to actually say, okay, this was a useful lesson, but we're not going to keep going with this idea. We're going to pivot and go with something else.
Right. Now it's a marketing turn. Once you have the product up and running, you already have your early adopters. That's the time when you get your first feedback. And you can get it like in very different ways. You could get it by different analytics tools. You could handle different survey campaigns. Whatever your marketing department or your marketing capabilities are, whatever your budget allows, it's now about communicating with your clients and getting their feedback. Depending on the source, if it's analytics, you just see like what's the most usable feature, if your clients actually understand your product, if it's easy to follow the design that you have came up with, or if it takes them time to sort out different functionalities that are in place. So you now start analyzing what you have on your plate after your customers really start playing with your product. And there are a lot of cases when people like understand that what they considered important, in fact, is not important. And it's now about your expectation, and it's about your timeline and about your budget. Because it all depends. Like the more money you have, the easier MVP and analytics will go. Like obviously, of course, you should have expert, but it's a bit easier when you have limited resources. So once you are done with MVP, you now need to be very careful with the feedback and analytics that you gather. And after you have this analysis, you already could decide like if it meets your expectation or not. And depending on the resources you have, you may decide like if it was rebuilding certain parts of it, if it was completely changing the strategy, or if it was just, close the project and just forget about it. There's like a good like inspirational story from one of our clients who's like healthcare startup from the New York. It was like self-funded startup as it usually happens, but finally they came to good investors. And I've been chatting with the CEO of the company, and she told me like we didn't really know what the value of our product was until 6 months later. Even though she was deeply into the industry for like 5 years, she has like perfect education. She knows what to expect. But after the real analysis of real people playing with the product, they understood that people are more interested in something that we didn't consider so important as the other like killer feature we sought. So we changed our direction and successfully moved further. So this is the real case, and this is something you as an entrepreneur, like as a young businessman, should be ready for. So be ready that MVP will bring you something unexpected. Hopefully it will bring you what you really wanted, what you really was ready for. But sometimes it gives you some unexpected outcomes, and you just to be ready for that and decide accordingly, depending of like your opportunities and the assets and resources you have at that time.
Digging now into the actual work that you're doing to build these MVPs, can you describe the set of tools and frameworks and development practices that you have invested in to be able to reduce the overhead involved in getting started and building velocity in a project, and the ways that you approach the overall structure and development of the code to be able to iterate quickly and be flexible and allow for evolution in the design and implementation of the project?
MVP is something like really tricky because you should balance between speed and quality. Of course, everybody just wants the project to be done like fast and at a high level of quality. That's easy to understand. We all want that when it comes to something, but it's important to understand that it's really balance. And with the MVP, the speed is sometimes, and I would say often, that speed is often more important than quality, because the outcome of the MVP, like the conclusion that you could make when the MVP is ready, you may come to the decision that you need to change something significantly, and changing something that you've spent a lot of time on building this will take you like again a lot of time. So when you build MVP, it's about this balance. So in order to be fast and in order to be able to provide quality at the same time, yeah, we actually use the tool that everyone probably is familiar with. It's Python framework, which is called Django. Incredible tool, like super powerful. And it's like, I would say like a perfect solution to 95% of the requests in web development world, in startup world, when you build something digital. So we actually use Django, and it helps us to speed up the development because we have some boilerplates. Some of them are inspired by cookie cutter, but we have adjusted them to the reality that we meet with our clients, and it already includes like modules and solution, the most popular in our clients' requests. So most obvious cases like login functionality that like in 90% of your project you will need it. And it's just one of the examples. So it's actually full of such solutions that's sometimes necessary, sometimes not. But at the end of the day, they will save you a lot of time during the development. So you with the MVP, you have to provide the first version as soon as possible, so your client will be the first one to play with it. So additionally, like while working on different projects, we really enjoy working with Docker. Like this tool really helps us to isolate like our working environments and really helps us to simplify like server configuration. It's like the part that you cannot exclude from any web development project, and it's like a cool solution. So Django, Django is a boilerplate which is based on the cookie cutter, and with the help of Docker, that's what we use. If we talk about front end, MVP is something that gives you flexibility at the same time. Because when you build like a new product, you could spend like a fortune and like lots of your time on building the UI and the UX. What helps you to build MVP is some pre-built theme. So Bootstrap theme or some front-end framework theme. It helps you to save a lot of time because you already have something ready to use. You just customize it according to your needs. And, you won't regret if you need to just forget about this project because you didn't spend a lot of time or money on this design version. But once you get this feedback, you already have opportunity to come up with the perfect design with a custom made solution specifically for you. So these are the tools that we use to speed up the development at the very early stages of the development.
As far as the developer experience and the environment setup, that can also be a critical piece to helping developers move quickly while maintaining quality in terms of linting rules, making sure the tests are run on a consistent basis, making sure that there are consistent style guides being applied, so things like black. And I'm wondering, what are some of the configurations and developer environment setup that you have found to be most critical to keep constant and consistent across projects to allow your developers to be able to jump in quickly and be working in a familiar environment and not have to try to adapt themselves to bespoke environments and bespoke project structures, because that can slow down the overall ability for them to be able to get comfortable and be productive?
At some point, we decided to come up with some storage of our knowledge because every project is unique, but at the same time, you face the same difficulties and you face the same challenges. So a while ago, we started to fill in our knowledge base, which contains answers and practical solutions to the most frequently asked questions of our developers, and it keeps the records of the development, tricks, hints, and something helpful that could save you time at the very beginning. To give you an idea, we even have a section in our knowledge base which is related to naming policy in MVP projects for startups, because it's quite frequent case when you don't know what will be the name of your project, but you already have to come up with some naming conventions in your code, and you need to give names to a variable. And so we have a strategy about that, and we have recommendation how to deal with the project when it's not ready for some final decisions, when you should be ready to change something in the future. So the knowledge base is our first thing here. It's the storage of all our experience with recommendation that all our developers and also non-technical guys in the company could use just to know the reality. Because often I would say that much more than half of our projects of the MVP are successful. And a successful project means that if you started developing it, then you'll probably continue this development. So it's not reasonable to replace the developer who started the project with someone else in the middle of this project. That's why if you begin this project and it's successful, you'll probably stay on it. And you won't know something that happens on the other project. That's why this knowledge base is unbelievably important, because it shares the knowledge, from the entire company. So from different projects, from different experiences, from different developers. And I would say we are really proud of it. We also try to schedule internal workshops to share this knowledge among companies. So it's our internal community that we try to develop, small Python community. And of course, we try to follow PIP8 recommendation. We use Pylint, and the black that you mentioned, that's also our choice depending on the project. For most of the project, we use it for making of our code. So
in terms of the architectural styles and some of the useful patterns that you found for being able to build quickly but maintain extensibility and allow for future evolution of the project, what are some of the approaches that you found to be most helpful for being able to maintain that velocity and flexibility?
So here I would go with monolith architecture, and 99, almost 100% of our projects are based on this architecture. It's a reasonable choice which fits most of the projects, especially when it comes to the beginning of the life cycle of this project. And that's why we prefer Django. It really helps with the speed of this development, just because it has really well-developed ecosystem and it has really rich functionality. Then after that, we could change our strategy and we could think about different solution. And like replace our initial plans or just extend them. But initially, it's all about monolith.
Going back to your point about Python being a good choice for being able to build these products and iterate, and Django being a useful framework, what are some of the surrounding benefits that you've seen from choosing Python as the target language and ecosystem to invest in for being able to build these MVPs and for getting startups off the ground, and some of the potential challenges or risks that you have seen as an outcome of choosing Python?
The first one is definitely the development speed. It gives you that. That's what you need with the MVP. Another advantage here is that you could clearly understand and you could predict, not just predict, you just know when the tools that you use will get a new release. So it's when you know when the next release of the tools that you are using. So you don't have surprises with the tool set that you use. So it's the development speed and it's about the predictability, right? That's predictability of the release cycle of the tool set that you use. That's about it because you clearly know when there's going to be a new version and you won't get any surprises with your tool set. So that's the main thing because modern projects, they require implementation of like huge amount of functionality, and it's really important to take into account a lot of questions related to the security, synchronization of different components in the project. For example, like changing the DB structure that will require changes in the form, in the admin panel, and the API request, and etc. And Python as well as Django allow you to develop functionality fast and to still get the high quality, which is unbelievably relevant for startups because most of the requests I get from clients is like, how fast could you build that? Could you cut the development type and still keep the expected quality? So it's really relevant for startups. And at the same time, Python and Django allow you to develop fast and do not regret about the quality. So another point here is that the tool that we use, they have like a big community, which means that it's popular and your toolset is really popular. So you have access to helpful information. And if you're stuck with something, if you have problems or challenges, I don't know, with certain feature, you don't know how to implement it, or you're just stuck with a certain library, I think that in most of the cases, you could easily find answer online. And this, again, about the predictability, about forecasting the thing that helps you to stay stable and provide like the expected result.
For companies or teams that are looking to use Python to get started, what are some of the cases where you might steer them away from it and into a different language, or maybe if they are within Python, maybe choosing a different framework than Django?
That really depends on the requirements of the project that you have. So there are obviously some drawbacks that these tools have because these are just like default tools for like fast development. That's why there are some potential drawbacks. And for example, like when it comes to functionality, if we take a look at Django, which gives you like a built-in functionality, and if you understand that this project just simply doesn't require all of that, that your clients and customers just won't use it. So it will be just an extra problem for you. You better go away without and go like in a simpler way. Just for example, if we stay within Python, you could go with micro frameworks and you could go with fast API, which is another perfect project. It just aimed for a bit different things. So when you see that there will be a lot of unused functionality within like built-in functionality of your framework, then just look into another tool. That's one of the solution. You could also think about drawbacks of Django, such as it being demanding to the resources. But I couldn't say it's really a big problem and that it's too demanding, but you should still take it into the account. At the same time, one of the drawbacks is that Django in Python is not the fastest framework. So if the performance, the like speed of the operation is important for you, you should consider some alternatives. But in like the most popular request that we have from our clients is still a very good solution. There are rare cases when Python and Django is not good, and I would say that very often clients already know about that. So if they know about these specific requirements and details, then probably they're already aware of the tech side of things. So to sum up, I would take into alternatives if you need something like performance and speed depending, or if you just don't need to use all of this pre-built functionality that comes under the bonnet of the Django.
And in your experience of working with teams and organizations to build MVPs and get started with learning about their customers and what projects and products are worthwhile, what are some of the most interesting or unexpected or challenging lessons that you've learned?
I'll be pragmatic here because there's no funny or fancy answer about that. Unfortunately, it's very pragmatic. And the answer is just that victory loves preparation. I would also add flexibility here. There's no big surprises. So if you work hard, if you plan hard, then there won't be anything unexpected to you or challenging. It's all about really preparation. Another important thing during the development of MVP is communication between all of the stakeholders. And once it's done about communication with your early adopters and your future users. So just stay well prepared and you will be successful, and be ready that something may go wrong. That's all about entrepreneurship. And what else you should take into account is before you start developing MVP, just make sure that you decided to go with the right vendor, with the right provider of these services. Just make sure that these guys are reliable, that you speak the same language. Of course, it's perfect when you are the developer yourself and you just begin to create like a new revolutionary product. But if you are not a tech savvy, just try to be the right company, the right tech partner. And once you select the right partner, make sure that the technologies you select for your MVP is correct. Of course, there are a lot of projects where Django, Python won't work. So you need to be ready to interview, to be ready to analyze all of these details before you begin the development, because it will cost you a lot if you realize it in the middle of something. That's why you have prototyping and proof of concept that we previously mentioned that will prevent you from something unexpected. And just don't forget about the purpose of MVP. So MVP is still the first minimum version of your product. It's minimum but viable. Don't go really further with that. Don't try to build the entire product with the MVP approach, because building product will require even more dedication from you. Nevertheless, MVP will still be complicated and challenging. Building the product will be even more involving and demanding to you. Just remember the purpose and make sure that you go with the right partners and with the right technologies for that. And like be well prepared. That's my advice.
And so, for teams who are thinking about going down the path of building an MVP to prove out their ideas, what are the cases where that's actually the wrong choice and they might be able to get those same lessons and same information some other path?
Definitely, MVP is a wrong choice when it's too early or it's too late. And when I mean too late, I mean that when you're already sure of the solution that you have. So when you don't need to test your ideas, when you don't need to test your series, and you already know your customer. So that's where you can safely skip the stage of MVP. Just go and build your product and just conquer. The same about when it's too early to build the MVP. When you just got an idea and you didn't think well, you didn't come up with a proof of concept or with a prototype, you didn't discuss it, you didn't plan it well, you didn't go through discovery stage. Discovery stage is incredibly important at the very beginning of your product. So that's where you've been asked a lot of questions that you didn't think at once. It's again about choosing a good technical partner who would ask you this question, because in your head you probably already have the solution that's world will love, so when everybody will enjoy. But you need also to hear some criticism from the other parts and to hear the question that you didn't think about. So MVP is not the best solution when it's too early or when you have already full information about the product you're going to build.
As you continue to work with clients and invest in your team and your development practices, what are some of the trends or developments in the Python language community and the Django framework community and some of the broader software ecosystem that you're paying closest attention to and considering for some of the future work that you're doing for your team and your clients?
That's nice because development is all about learning something new, and we learn something like really daily. We don't have something on our horizon that we closely watching and we keep an eye on the releases or something like that, because every day brings us the challenges that we didn't meet yesterday, and we have to find the solution for them. And the more we learn, the less we know. Surprisingly, but there are so many tools that we didn't try yet, and they already exist. And once we get this new challenge, it's perfect just because we're going to look for the solution that we don't have in our own knowledge base yet. That's why it's opportunity to learn something new. So my recommendation is just not to stick to the tool set that you have, but it's about exploring everything. Okay, not daily, but still it's about exploring something new. Just to give like a real life example, one of our tasks that we had was about OCR, optical characters recognition, and we're trying to go with some like default Python stack with some Tesseract libraries, things like that. But like after doing some research on the topic that we are still very familiar with, we discovered Adobe API solution which solved our task in no time. We got solution like without spending a lot of money on that, but it was like implemented, I don't know, 10, 20 times faster than if we go with the custom made solution. So just keep exploring, keep doing your pet projects, try to learn something new and try to teach somebody if you have the knowledge. It will help you to discover what you have within your stack and will bring you something new that you never met. So to finally answer your question, we just keep exploring what we have around us without sticking to something specific, except for Django. Yeah, but we have, of course, like as every community, we have channels in our Slack team where we share what we learned today, what were the challenges, what were the tools and the solution. So that's how we learn among our team, and that's what keeps us up to date in our industry.
Are there any other aspects of the work that you're doing at PlanX or the overall process of building an MVP and validating it, or some of the benefits of the Python ecosystem for startups that we didn't discuss yet that you'd like to cover before we close out the show?
I would recommend to be focused not only on the technical side of things, because MVP is about understanding the business. This is why I love what I'm doing, is because this is the mix of the business and the technology. So when it comes to developing an MVP, it's crucial to clearly understand what are the goals of this project, what we are trying to achieve, like what is the problem that we are trying to solve for our future customers, for our clients. So once you're on the same track with all of the stakeholders, with the participants, that means you're ready. Because often development is like thing that keeps you involved, that you are deep in the tool that where you write code into the IDE. You're often deep into your IDE, you just write your code, you enjoy the solution you prepare, but sometimes you could forget about the problem that you are solving. So try to balance between technology and the solution you are doing. And that's another key to success. And of course, communication.
Well, for anybody who wants to get in touch with you and follow along with the work that you're doing, I'll have you add your preferred contact information to the show notes. And so with that, I'll move us into the picks. And this week, I'm going to choose a utility that I've found to be quite useful a few times called Data Model Code Generator. It's just a little command line utility that you can feed a YAML file or a JSON schema, and it will spit out a bunch of Pydantic models for you that maps to the structure that you're trying to replicate. So you can very quickly go from API spec or a specific data structure and turn that into some reusable Python models in Pydantic so that you can get up and running. And I just recently used that to build a wrapper library for concourse pipelines. So definitely checking out that utility if you're looking for being able to quickly spin up some data models for being able to manage typed data structures in Python. And so with that, I'll pass it to you, Tony. Do you have any picks this week?
Again, I would go not to the technical side of things, but about recommendation. And about enjoying your life while doing the thing that you love. I think you're all aware about Richard Branson, the millionaire, the owner of Virgin brand. And the thing that I noticed about all of the startuppers, all of the young businessmen, all of those who try to build their products, is about this desire, it's about the curiosity. And there's a great book which will help technical guys, nerds, geeks, those who just prefer to stay in the code. There's a book that will help you to understand your clients, to be on the same track with them. The book is called Screw It, Let's Do It. It's about all of the opportunities that Richard Branson had during his life, about the solution that pitfalls, about his failures, about the problems he had and how did he overcome it. And it's about the way to enjoy life while doing what you really like. It's about be ready to risk. It's about really live life up to the full.
All right. Definitely have to take a look at that. Well, thank you very much for taking the time today to join me and share the work that you're doing at Plan X and your experiences of helping teams and organizations build and validate MVPs. It's definitely a very useful exercise and useful set of lessons for anybody who's interested in trying to prove out their ideas and figure out whether it's something that is going to be valuable to their clients and customers. So I appreciate all the time and energy that you and your team are putting into that. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for having me here, and good luck.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to check out our other shows, the Data Engineering Podcast, which covers the latest on modern data management, and the Machine Learning Podcast, which helps you go from idea to production with machine learning. Visit the site at pythonpodcast.com to subscribe to the show, sign up for the mailing list, and read the show notes. And if you learned something or tried out a project from the show, then tell us about it. Email hosts@pythonpodcast.com with your story. And to help other people find the show, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and tell your friends and coworkers.